Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan, and my co-host is back, Julio Vela. What's going on, man? No soccer this week.
No soccer, big football. It's back.
Oh, yeah. We're back.
Maybe you've heard. Maybe you've heard Cowboys, Cardinals. Although it's not as exciting as what's happening here.
Yeah, but nobody's going to be playing worth a crap.
Well.
It's a preseason game.
I know, but football's back.
Football is back. It's Tom Brady's birthday, too.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? You know, Tom Brady? Yeah. You see this, Tom?
That's rough, dude.
That's for you.
That is rough. Guess you won't be picking him on fantasy football. That's why you're going to lose. We got a great show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. For the second week in a row, our guest is named Chris. Chris Morton, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jimmy.
We have another candidate named Chris. 2 weeks in a row.
That is true.
What's going on?
Hey.
How did you manage to do that?
You know.
Now, Chris, you're actually running for judge.
Yes.
You're running for the 230th District Court here in Harris County.
That's correct.
So, you know, last week we had somebody from running for Congress. Now we have somebody running for a bench. We're lining up the candidates so far.
I wonder if we could ever get two candidates in a row, or two candidates in general, named Jose. Doubt it.
Have you filled out your ballot?
Doubt it. I'm Pearland, man.
Have you filed yet?
There ain't a Mexican in Pearland that's going to get elected for the next 20 years, dude.
You'd have to. Are you in the Harris County side?
Huh?
Are you on the Harris County side? Could you run in Harris County, or would you have to run?
No, I'm Brazoria.
Oh.
I'm pure Brazoria.
You could change the bench down there.
Well, they got some pretty deep-seated history there.
So you don't think you'd have a chance?
Well.
No way, Jose?
No way, Jose. No way, Jose. I like it.
We're going to be with you for the next hour, ladies and gentlemen, talking with Chris. We got a lot of great subjects to talk about. 713-807-1794 is our number. We'll open up the phone lines around 8:30 so you can get your questions and comments with us. We also have Twitter up at HCCLA_TV. We really encourage you all to participate, especially when we have candidates on, because we want you to find out everything you want to know from our candidates who are going to be taking our elected benches and offices and everything else. First thing I want to talk about, guys, I know this is going to be a big issue for you coming up, and that is this whole pretrial bonds. The whole system is being revamped right now. Chris, I kind of want to get your thoughts on it, because we've seen what's happening in the misdemeanor courts right now. And I think the next bastion is going to be the felony courts. And we've already seen a new bond schedule that's come out. A lot of people are not really too thrilled about the new bond schedule, let's say that. But as a candidate, what do you see your role in perhaps making a reform at the felony level?
Well, already the new system is hitting felony. The same pretrial assessment system that's going in for misdemeanor is going in for felony as well. So you're going to have that same kind of assessment. There's going to be presumptions for personal recognizance bonds in felony cases as well as misdemeanors, and that's started just this past weekend. It's definitely a better system than what we've had in the past, and for some felonies, obviously the bond schedule has increased, but for a lot of things, you're going to have people who can at least get personal recognizance bonds in felony courts in a much quicker way.
Now, is the public defender's office, are they assisting with the bond hearings on felonies, or is it just misdemeanors?
I believe they're going to be doing across the board. I'm not 100% sure on that, but
should have asked that when we had Alex on.
It's across the board.
It is.
It should be.
Okay.
Yep.
It should be, because the screening that they have is based upon 9 factors, and then you're going to have 3 different measurements within them. One of them is the likelihood that they would fail to show up for court. Another is a likelihood to commit a new criminal offense, and another whether or not they are going to be flagged as a possible violent criminal, or the likelihood of committing a new violent crime. The 2 most important in assessing whether or not someone's going to have a presumption for a personal recognizance bond are going to be the likelihood of committing a new crime and the likelihood of showing up for court.
One of the factors that is going to be considered is prior criminal convictions. And there's a magic number of 14 days, I believe, that the tool will count. So if it's something that, yes, for about 30 years, individuals have been pleading guilty in an unconstitutional bail system to get out of jail, and these individuals who are doing that are racking up criminal records. And so this new tool says, okay, we recognize some of that's been happening, so we won't say anybody that's getting the time served, 3 days, 3 for 2, 4 for 2, 10 for 5. We won't really count that, but anything 14 or more, 14 days or more will count. What's your opinion on the pretrial tool using prior criminal convictions in determining whether or not an individual should be given a PR bond or not?
Well, in some cases, I think it should be determined based upon the type of offense it is, not merely on the number of days they served on it. If we're talking about driving while license invalid, some people pick those up right and left, and they can be a Class B misdemeanor. And there are people who have spent a substantial amount of time in jail on that misdemeanor. That should never, ever hinder someone from getting a personal recognizance bond, unless they have something else on their record. The same way with marijuana cases. We see, you guys have probably seen in your criminal defense practice that a young person will start off with a marijuana conviction. They'll take that time served. They can't get a job.
They lose their driver's license.
They lose their driver's license. They lose their job. They're unable to get an apartment. They become desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. And that's when we see them up in the felony courts down the line.
How do you feel about the whole marijuana reform and the non-prosecution of Class B and Class A, or the diversion program that our new DA has instituted, and kind of the movement to decriminalize? I mean, what's your feeling on it?
Well, I mean, social attitudes have changed a great deal when it comes to marijuana. And studies have shown that marijuana is no more dangerous than alcohol, and in many cases less so. We've all known people in our lives that use marijuana, and they function as normal people. I think, having been a prosecutor and tried felony marijuana cases, they're difficult to get convictions on because people just don't see it like they used to. Now, many of our judges still see it in the same way. And there may be some prosecutors who still see it in the same way, but I applaud District Attorney Ogg for her new stance on it. And it's been beneficial to a lot of folks, and it can keep people from going down that path that we see getting into more and more trouble, becoming a desperate person and doing desperate things.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part with drugs, I mean, look, most of these people are addicts. And it's not just the people that get caught in the court system. I mean, there are lawyers who are addicts. There are doctors who are addicts. There are teachers who are addicts. Some of them get brought into the court system. Some of them don't. They hide their addictions. And unfortunately, the people that seem to get caught in the court system are the ones that are poor, and they just come back over and over again because, they don't have the ability to pay to get rehab. They don't have the ability to hire lawyers who are willing to try to present a case of mitigation to a prosecutor or present a case of mitigation to a judge. I mean, how do you feel about going into that? I mean, you're going to be judging somebody, and I mean, that's got to be one of the hardest things you can do.
Well, yes, but I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about the criminal justice system. I mean, when we're there every day, we truly do see the confluence of almost every social issue that we talk about, we see in the news. Oftentimes we'll see folks who aren't unable to get health care. They're unable to afford premiums. They lose their health care, but they still have mental health or other problems. They begin self-medicating.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, you can buy prescription drugs a lot cheaper on the street.
Oh, absolutely.
Than it is to have the health care and get the prescription.
Or get your friends to get them for you, or
Exactly.
family members. I mean, now we have this new the opioid crisis. Well, guess what? That's nothing new. People have been abusing prescription drugs for years. I mean, all of a sudden in 2017, they're claiming that this is a crisis? I mean, come on. I've seen people getting fake scripts for years, getting their friends to, getting off their friends. I mean, people in college, when I was in college, decades ago at this point,
Has it been that long?
it's been almost two. Sadly to say. But even back then, people were, they were finding the people who had Adderall prescriptions, who had whatever prescription, and they were like, give me some, I need that. Well, why do you need it? You don't have the same problems that I do, but it makes me feel good. It helps me concentrate in class. Whatever the deal is, And so this is not a new problem. This has been going on for years.
And speaking of Adderall, it's interestingly, I believe Adderall used to be felony, one Adderall felony.
Yeah.
Adios amigo. But I think that's what we say. Adios amigo.
Right.
That's right.
Right after you say, no way, Jose.
No way, Jose. Adios amigo.
Yeah.
But now the
English, please, Jim.
hey, look, this ain't no sanctuary city, man.
Hey, in an ode to
I'm
ode to one of our producers. It's all Greek to me, okay?
But now Adderall they're charging him under a PCS misdemeanor, miscellaneous drug or dangerous drug. So that's not a
But think about who most of the Adderall people are.
right. That's exactly
young
right.
people.
That's right.
Because guess what? They get prescribed it as young kids because they have ADHD or they're hyper kids or whatever. And so, the parents take them in at 10 years old. Oh, well, let's put them on some variant of Adderall. So you're getting these kids addicted to prescription drugs at an early age. I mean, this is nothing new.
Yeah, and interesting that you'd bring up age. And going back to the new
Tool.
the new tool, the new assessment. One of the factors, and probably the second most weighted factor in whether or not someone is more likely to commit a new crime is going to be age. And this is a concern that I have for the new program, because if someone is 22 years or younger, they're already going to get 2 points against them on that assessment for whether they've had any type of interactions with law enforcement before.
Yeah.
And where it comes to that presumption of a personal recognizance bond and felony, that score of 2 puts them right up at the maximum for that presumption. So if they've had any interaction with law enforcement before, an arrest for a misdemeanor, that they maybe did more than 14 days.
Right.
Whether that could be a marijuana charge from pre-Kim Og days.
Right.
They're automatically going to lose that presumption. Now that doesn't mean that they will not get a personal recognizance bond, but that means they're not going to be fast-tracked. And for a felony offense, they could be looking at up to 48 hours before they see a magistrate.
And that's a big deal. So 2 points. The first one is back in the day, or up until January, recently, even through January, getting a 15-day for 5 sentence, that's a time served, 15 for 5. It would take individuals in the system 5 days, 6 days, sometimes we were seeing that, to just get to court. And so a big problem that I believe with the new tool is that they put 14 days or 15 days or wherever they were at as this arbitrary, or this number that says, okay, 14 days below we're not going to count, 15 days and above will count. However, everyone knows that 6 months ago, a 15 for 5, 15 for 6, it would take individuals 5 or 6 days just to get to court, and that would be the time served. But on the what do you say?
Right, and where had we known, as criminal defense attorneys, that would have changed how we would have wanted to plea out our clients 6 months ago.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the problem.
Right.
Is they always
It's arbitrary.
Yeah, it's an arbitrary system of just picking numbers. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll just pick 15 or we'll pick 14 or whatever. I mean, it's like the federal sentencing guidelines. I mean, you've got all this table, and we just make up numbers, and we say, well, if it's over $1 million, it's worth this so many points. If it involves X number of victims, it's worth so many points. If it's this, that, or the other, it's worth 4 points here or 3 points here. It's like, who makes this crap up? I mean, it's just, we are just arbitrarily pulling numbers out with no rhyme or reason to it.
Well, and Jimmy, in defense of the folks who are putting this program together, a lot of that is based on data, and it's data drawn from across the country. And they are looking at trends within that data. You know, which factors actually contribute more to whether or not someone is going to commit a new crime. And believe it or not, the factor that weighs heavily and is most indicative of somebody committing a new crime is whether or not they're on bond for a crime already when they commit a crime that they're in jail for.
Sure.
You know, and you may ask, well, how many dollars do they have to spend to find out that being on bond for a crime when you commit a crime is the indicator that you're more likely to commit a crime?
Well, I mean,
well, now we know.
Right.
It's kind of.
It's about 3 million or whatever. it is.
But I mean, the whole point of this whole thing and the ruling out of federal court was we're supposed to make individualized assessments, right? But that's the goal, is to make individualized assessments. Well, if you're just plugging and playing people into a matrix, how is that really individualized assessments? I mean, you've basically changed the scheme. You've gone from a pure money bond system, okay, where you really don't look at anything, to now, yeah, you're looking at factors, but it's a matrix. So you know, we're not really assessing your individualized situation, I feel like.
Well, and with 80,000 cases coming in a year,
How do you do that?
how are you going to do that in a timely basis?
Well, I mean, that is the question. I believe they've had to hire additional magistrates to do that. And of course, what we're looking at here is assessing for that presumption of a personal recognizance bond. They're still going to get that 1517 hearing, but some will be fast-tracked. If they have that presumption, they're going to be fast-tracked to a magistrate, and they should get one if they have that presumption. If they don't have that presumption, they could still get a personal recognizance bond, but that's going to be an individualized assessment by a magistrate, and hopefully a well-trained and magistrate with good judgment.
Let me ask you this. What's your opinion on, let's take, for example, the age of that being a factor. What's your opinion on that? And as someone who might be judging someone, or even as a defense lawyer, what's your opinion on that being used, and how should a magistrate use that to determine some bond?
Well, that is my biggest concern with the new tool, is that being, and again, next to whether or not they're already on bond for a crime, that is the most weighted factor in whether or not they're going to be eligible for that or have that presumption. I see that as an avenue for bias to creep into the system. Now, I applaud the folks who've put together the program. They've done a lot to try to remove bias. The interview process no longer looks at employment or types of employment. It no longer looks at the address, which could indicate or be an indicator of racial prejudice, since we still have a rather segregated community here around Houston. And they're trying to remove that. However, we all know, having been around the criminal justice system, that some communities are policed more heavily than others. And it is the young people in those communities, our black communities and Hispanic communities, the youth there are going to be policed more. It's more likely that the youth are going to be arrested there. And that's where I see a possibility of racial bias creeping in, because they're already starting with 2 points against them just for being 22 years or younger.
Sure.
Right.
And that is my biggest concern. Hopefully our magistrates will be looking at that and seeing, hey, look, if what puts them over the edge for that presumption is their age, they should be able, that magistrate should give them a personal recognizance bond.
You know, I want to go back to the diversion issue we talked about, because we've seen a lot of diversions, these new programs coming in. We've seen some changes. We've seen a lot of controversies here recently. You know, of course, the marijuana cases, A and B misdemeanors, are being diverted around the entire system altogether. The DWI diversion programs have not been diverted around the entire system. And was it just this week the office announced no pretrial diversion for people who are soliciting prostitution cases? You know, I mean, look, it's a contract. Diversion is a contract with the DA's office. And so if they don't want to offer it to guys or girls who are soliciting prostitution, I've yet to see a woman solicit prostitution come across my desk, but I'm sure it happens. I'm sure there's been cases of it.
I have yet to represent a gigolo.
Yeah, I have too.
Yet to represent one.
But, so it's a contract. And I think the way they're doing it on the marijuana cases is the right way to do it. I feel like the way they're doing it on the DWI cases is really the wrong way to do it because they're trying to use the courts to help them supervise the diversions. And this has caused now a problem because there are not just one, there are more than one judge now who are not going along with this and are refusing to basically grant the reset that's needed for the diversion. I mean, there's a lot of people who say the judge shouldn't interfere with it. And I want to get your opinion on that, but my counter to that is, if you're going to use the judicial system as a supervisory agency of your contract, you're kind of asking for this problem.
Good point. What says you?
Well, this typically happens in the misdemeanor courts. I'm not running for one of those. I'm running for a felony court.
Yeah.
But I have seen this problem and experienced this problem in my criminal defense practice. My opinion is that a pretrial diversion, whether they've set it up as a system where the probation department is managing it, or whether they're going to ask permission from a judge to do this, it is at the sole discretion of the district attorney's office whether they offer that. Now, a judge can obviously try to throw a monkey wrench in there. And the misdemeanor judges that I've talked to, their main concern is that the district attorney's office may try to go around them. They don't like that. Judges, for some reason, for the most part, don't like that. But my take is it's really a waste of resources for the judge to fight the district attorney on this.
I agree.
If a district attorney's office wants to offer a pretrial diversion, and if the judge doesn't want to have anything to do with the supervision, that's fine. If probation department, which manages most of these diversions, if they don't want to have anything to do with it, well, that's fine. They can tell the district attorney they don't want to do it. The district attorney will have to find some other way to do that. Okay, but it is solely at the discretion of the district attorney's office.
Right.
And for a judge to then say, well, I'm not going to sign your reset, prosecutor just needs to set it for trial, announce ready, rest, and you're done.
Which is what happened recently.
That did happen recently. And here's the thing, that makes it a waste of resources, it makes it a waste of time, it makes it a waste of taxpayer dollars. And I am a Democrat, but I find it amazing that it is Republicans and fiscal Republicans who are doing this.
But I do know that there is at least one felony court, which shall remain nameless, that I know of, where I indicated that we might be trying to work on a pretrial diversion and was told in no uncertain terms that this court does not approve pretrial diversions or only approves them in limited circumstances. And I was like, oh, well, that's news. So there is at least one felony court that, may obstruct the process of that. But, again, I don't understand why, if you're the DA and you have decided that these are the cases you want to offer these deals on and that you want to divert around the program, because that's what, around the court system, because that's what diversion is. You're diverting around the court program. Right. So why do you involve the courts in your diversion? If the whole point is to go around the court, take it out of the court.
Well, it can't go around the court because it's still an active case.
Well, no, you can dismiss it.
Right,
if you dismiss it on the front end.
Well, here's the thing, especially when you're looking at felonies. If you're putting someone on a long-term pretrial diversion, especially on a drug case,
it could be 1 year.
It could be, but typically on a felony, they're going to want to go a little longer than that.
Can they on a diversion? I've never seen one exceed 1 year, though.
They can.
Okay.
They can. Don't get me wrong.
You're free to contract.
Don't get me wrong. I haven't had one go beyond a year.
Yeah.
But it has been an option. I've seen it as an option in contracts I've had.
Sure.
I would typically, in my practice, push back heavily against that. Because most treatment programs are going to be less than a year.
Yeah.
But they, again, it can be contracted for longer than that. And again, you'd be pushing up against a statute of limitations if you wanted to refile. So typically speaking, you're going
But well, not really, because it's 5 years on a felony.
Well,
It's a 5-year
could be
statute.
3
So
on
if-
some.
It could be some on some, and in some cases, they could go a long time. I mean, if you're in the 209th, you've got a case that's gone a long time. Kim Ma gets elected, you've got a possibility for a pretrial diversion in a felony case. You'd be pushing up against it if you dismiss.
Do you think some of this is political?
I think a lot of it's political.
Really?
Oh yes, absolutely.
And
But don't you get a tolling while the indictment's pending?
If the indictment's pending, but
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So look,
but if you dismiss,
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So let's say it's charged, okay, day one. Let's say you get arrested that day and they charge you that day, right? Or they charge you within 30 days, okay? You got the indictment pending. I mean, if the DA's office can't decide within 6 months on a felony drug case whether or not they want to offer somebody a diversion, they need to get some new people in there who can make these decisions. So, I mean, at that point, you're only 7 months in. For 6 months of it, you're going to get the benefit of having the indictment pending.
I'm not fighting against you, Jimmy.
I'm
I think it's a good idea.
I'm just saying, like, you're not up against a statute problem. And with DWIs, with misdemeanors, you have 2 years to file. So, I mean, DWI, you get the tolling benefit of when the complaint's filed. You don't even have to take it to grand jury. So usually, DWIs are filed that night. You know, if you can't make a decision on whether somebody is eligible for a DWI pretrial diversion within 6 months, you got a problem, okay? It's pretty cut and dry. You've now got, there really is no statute of limitation problem, because if you make it a 1-year contract, you've still got a whole nother year and a half at least to refile that case if they screw up.
I think part of the problem is the procedures, at least in, let's say, misdemeanor DWI, that it takes to get into a pretrial intervention program. You're talking about first setting, okay, waste. Second setting, you're 2 months in. Set up the interview. You hit the interview. Here comes third setting. You're waiting for the TRAS to come back. Fourth setting, you're talking 4 months now. You got the TRAS back, and now you're waiting for the contract. They are so swamped down there right now that I haven't been able to get a contract for a number of my clients for pretrial intervention.
But the statute's tolling.
Well, it's told, but then the judge comes in and says, this case is 5 or 6 months old.
Right.
And you approach and say, Judge, we applied for the intervention program 4 months ago, 5 months ago. We're still getting it finalized. And then that's where we're getting this pushback.
And also, as long as you're having the probation department manage, you're going to want to have it as a pending case.
Yeah.
Probation is not going to want to be handling dismissed cases.
No, but that's the whole point. I just don't think probation should be involved. You put these people in a contract, and it gets to another point that I want to get to in a second, but I want to remind everybody we're going to open up the phone line, 713-807-1794. You can get in here on our conversation with our guest, Chris Morton, myself, and Julio. You can also hit us up on Twitter at HCCLA_TV. But that gets to my other point, is just the inefficiency at which we are running the dockets in this courthouse. I mean, this whole idea that we have to keep coming back for setting after setting after setting, once a month, once every 6 weeks, it is so archaic and so stupid, especially since we are about to go to mandatory e-filing January 1. I mean, this is just a really ridiculous proposition that we have to keep herding people in like cattle every day, thousands of people, a mad crush, all to make a 9 o'clock docket in 20 some odd courts, 30 courts, whatever it is, 32 courts or whatever. And I mean, this is just, it's an absurd system on its face. And I mean, a lot of these diversion issues that we're talking about could be solved by docket management.
Yes, yes, without a doubt. It would be nice if we didn't have to have defendants there every month.
Well, we don't.
I know we don't, but that's how it's been done, and unfortunately, how things have been done seems to be the catalyst for how they're going to be done in the future.
Yeah, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, guess what?
It's broke. It's broke.
Okay, so we need to fix it. But this is literally a conversation I have with people that come in my office, and I'm sure you guys have the same conversation. Okay, we're going to go to court. Well, what's going to happen?
Nothing.
Nothing.
We're going to get a reset.
You are going to sit in the audience. You're going to watch me walk around looking like I don't know what the heck I'm doing, looking at everybody else walking around like they don't know what the heck they're doing. You're going to see some people shuffle some papers. You're going to see some people get mad. You're going to see some people be happy. You're not going to say a word. We're never going to see the judge because they're never going to come out. The people on the side are going to call the docket, and we're going to sign a piece of paper and promise to come back in another month and do this whole charade all over again. That's literally the conversation that I have with everybody who comes in charged with state court. And then they're like, well, how long do we have to do that for? 5 or 6 times till we're finally forced to set the case for trial.
7 months.
I mean, just give us a docket control order that says, okay, here is a 12-month schedule. Okay, motions are to be filed by this date.
Maybe a shorter schedule.
8 months, whatever. I mean, give it reasonable time.
Absolutely. If you go ahead, and one of the things is our judges currently are managing to metrics instead of the cases. You're managing. You want your trial docket to be low because that's going to look good. You want the number of pending cases to be in a certain range. My take is, hey, every case is headed to trial on day one. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't get to trial, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead, get it set for trial, get your pretrial motions, and if it's going to be worked out in between, let's do that.
But think about how much easier...
attorneys can do that. Attorneys are responsible enough to do that.
Well, and think about how much easier it would be for a prosecutor to sit there and resolve cases at their desk, either via email or over the phone, negotiating with the defense lawyers, rather than this mass chaos of humanity that we have in a courtroom, where you have people shouting, where you have all this drama, you have people banging on the wall back in the holdover cell, and I mean, it's just, you know, it's just not conducive to negotiate cases and negotiate resolution of cases.
Now, as far as attorneys, I mean, we would still need status conferences because the judge is going to want to know what's going on.
What's going on?
But your defendant doesn't need to be there.
But the best, not only does the defendant need to be there, but with e-filing, guess what? It wouldn't be hard for everybody to file a status report.
Hey,
that's true.
But how?
Even with non-e-filing, it's not hard to go down.
Are you going to require judges to actually read?
Well, you know what the beauty is? Every judge has a computer. And I'm sure all those computers have a PDF reader. So all they have to do while they're sitting up there is go, click. Okay, so this is where the status is of the case. All right, next one. You know, I mean, it's
there's
not
nothing preventing anyone from setting the case for plea as an interim setting. You know, and there's nothing setting for a judge to say, hey, I want this defendant to come in. I know they're not scheduled to be here, but maybe we have an interlock condition. Let's contact the bond company or pretrial services or just the attorney.
Send out a notice of hearing and say, here's a hearing date. Come on down.
That's how it happens in a lot of smaller counties.
Right, and so, I mean, it's crazy to me that we continue on this.
Well, it's the same thing that we're seeing with the collapse of some of these diversion programs, the waste and strain on resources. So, up until last week, John, aka somebody who's looking for or soliciting prostitution or soliciting sex for money, could get a pretrial intervention. You could just apply. You could apply. It wasn't automatic, but you could apply, and then you could do a packet, and then you'd go take an interview, and then maybe if there's no other reason why you shouldn't get one, and you were just kind of, you know, in the mood that night or whatever, and maybe you get one. But now there's been some sort of amendment, or I'm not going to say if it's across the board, but there's no pretrial interventions for Johns anymore.
Well, and look, and we can bitch about that all we want. I mean, that it's not fair. You've changed the treatment, but you know what? That's her right. That's her right as the DA to decide.
It is.
What I'm more concerned about, though, Julio, is you think about this. I mean, if the problem is the backup, all right, and we don't have enough manpower.
That was the problem.
If you go to a whole electronic system where you eliminate the need for defendants to come down to court until it's absolutely necessary, well, guess what? Those number 3 and number 2 prosecutors that are spending all their time on the frickin' elevators, hauling up files, laying out the files, sitting there for docket call, and when somebody doesn't show up, state moves to revoke, state moves to revoke. I mean, it's like, come on. Couldn't we use that 30 minutes that you're sitting there like a robot saying that phrase? Wouldn't it be better spent going over diversion applications?
Yes.
Just a thought.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Well, and the impetus,
that's all I did.
The impetus behind that rule change was the strain on the probation department. at least that's the rumor, that the probation department was getting too many pretrial interventions. The district attorney wanted to use judicial resources to take care of pretrial interventions for Johns, and they couldn't handle it. They were too overwhelmed. With that, plus all this new bail reform and all this other new supervision that was happening, so they said, you know what? Probation's too overwhelmed. We can't do this anymore. Cut the pretrial interventions for Johns. So now, if you get arrested for prostitution, soliciting prostitution, you're either getting your case dismissed, or you're going to trial, or you're taking a plea deal and getting a conviction.
But again, it begs the question, why does a pretrial diversion for a solicitation of prostitution case need to be supervised by the court?
Agreed.
Okay? You dismiss it on the front end, and you tell the guy, look, come back in 12 months, and you need to show proof that you completed the AIDS awareness class, a human trap, whatever your conditions are, okay? Because most of them are classes, and you show up and show us you've done 20 hours of community service or whatever the hell it is. You don't need you don't need a probation officer to do that. You don't.
What's your opinion on the use of judicial resources for interventions programs or programs to the DA's office?
Look, if they're having a problem with resources, then they have to juggle how exactly they're doing things. They can shorten the length of time, have fewer reporting, have fewer conditions on them, make it easier on probation to handle these cases, if that's a problem. Another thing they could do and again, misdemeanor judges that I've talked to don't like this idea, but this has been a workaround against those who aren't approving pretrial diversions. In a lot of cases, a class and dismiss is appropriate, as opposed to a supervised, pretrial diversion. Pretrial diversion has bells and whistles to it, and ultimately, what you're wanting that AIDS awareness class. And if that's appropriate, if that's what you're really trying to get to, and if that's what you're really trying to educate and show the dangers of committing this crime, and if it's appropriate, the prosecutor should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take up the resources. Now, that being said, all of this is purely at the discretion of DA Ogg. And if she doesn't want to do that, well, they're not going to do that.
I agree.
Do you think that the role of the judiciary should sometimes intervene with the discretion of DA Ogg in the implementation of some of these programs?
Absolutely not. No. The district attorney, they're part of the executive branch. Judiciary is different. Where we intersect is in trial and managing the cases in the courtroom. We, in the judiciary are not going to countermand, the discretion of the prosecutor. Some judges are doing that, and it's a waste of time. We've already discussed that. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of resources, because the prosecutor has methods of getting past that. They may not want to do that because there's some other ramifications down the line, but they can if they want to push the point. So having a judge trying to say, no, I don't like your discretion, Ms. Ogg, on this, it's a losing battle.
It's just like judicial discretion. Everybody has their own little fiefdom of discretion.
The same thing happens with prosecutors. They don't like what the judge does in certain cases, so they're going to like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna take my right to go to trial on this case. I don't like the fact that the judge would give this person probation.
I'm not going to waive my right to a jury.
Yeah. Now they can do that, and if the person's not going to be eligible for probation, at trial, well, that's something they can do.
Yeah, they have the right.
They have that right. But again, I don't like it when a prosecutor tries to interfere with a judge, especially as a criminal defense attorney. If it's the benefit of my client, I want the best thing I can get. If I can get it from the judge, I want to do that. If I get it from the prosecutor, I don't want the judge to interfere.
What do you view the role of a judge to be?
The judge is a servant of the community. Okay, it's not a servant of the law. It's not a servant of the prosecution. And I know you live down in Brazoria County.
Yep.
So you're aware of that.
Yes, I'm very aware. Very aware.
But no, you're a servant of the people and all the people. Every right that a criminal defendant has, the rights against unusual search and seizure, many of the rights that we find in the Bill of Rights go directly to the accused. Well, all of those things have a duty to them, and it's the judge's duty to enforce those rights, to make sure those rights are protected, and the criminal defense attorney. But where the criminal defense attorney is zealously advocating and trying to sell that this is a violation of those rights, it is the judge's duty to see that through. And in the same way, you know, they have a duty to the state as well, that they get that fair trial. Mm-hmm. So it's more a servant to the community than anything else. Now, they are constrained by the law, as anyone else is inside that room. But all three roles are very important: the criminal defense attorney, the prosecutor, and the judge. And they all have different constraints on them, and with good reason.
Yeah.
What do you say about that? Sounds like you're soft on crime. What do you say about that?
I'm sorry, but if protecting people's rights is soft on crime, well, I'll be soft on crime.
Well, but is it really a judge's job to be tough or soft on crime? I mean,
no. The judge should be surprised by every case that comes in front of them, because they shouldn't know those facts. They're not there to be tough on crime. Now, don't get me wrong. Sentencing is where it's at. That's where the judgment is, and that's a difficult thing on a judge whenever they are doing sentencing. And you know, in some cases, they're going to be tough, and others not so much. You know, and again, you're going to have to use judgment. We talked about earlier people who are addicts. Yeah. You know, and I applaud the judges right now. They have that reintegration court trying to help addicts. They still put them in custody a little more than I'm
I mean, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the default is, if somebody screws up and they go back to using, we're going to slap the cuffs on them and give them jail therapy? I mean, why do we think that's going to be a solution?
I know it's not.
It never has been. I mean, it is not a deterrent to someone who is an addict just to slap the cuffs on them.
Right. Well,
I don't get it.
I think that there needs to be a change in that mindset in our judiciary, and the mindset has been, and you've seen it with bonds, skin in the game. There's got to be consequences. There's personal responsibility. Well, the problem is an addict lacks that personal responsibility. That's one of the reasons they're an addict. We need to help them get there. In my practice as a criminal defense attorney, I've had clients up there, and I'm like, look, you know, yes, my client is going to test positive. They're going to test positive for the drugs they used to be prescribed for, and they're not prescribed for anymore. They're going to test positive, and you're going to want to put him or her in custody. And that's not why we're here. Yeah. We are here to get this person the help they need because they are an addict. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I've been successful in begging judges not to put my clients in jail, but that's what it comes down to, begging.
Yeah, I mean, part of our job is being beggars, unfortunately. I don't know, I mean, it's just I just have never seen the whole jail therapy thing be a success, and yet it seems to keep being the default, that even when there's a slight, oh, well, I'm going to put you in for a weekend. Well, what's that really doing? You're better off ordering them to inpatient rehab, because they're not going to get it in the jail. I mean, frankly, they might get the crap beat out of them in jail.
That's true.
And I'm not sure that that's really what anybody wants to happen in the system.
Well, it's certainly not what I want.
Because then they're going to get hooked on painkillers after, after they get the crap beat out of them. Then they're going to be stuck on OxyContin and everything else trying to relieve the pain. I mean, so you're putting an addict into a really and it's not like there ain't drugs in jail. You know,
right.
I mean, you think that by putting an addict in jail, where they get it, where they can get it, where they still have access to it, I don't know that that's the best thing. There's all sorts of substances in a jail.
How do you plan, or how are you gonna, in the event in the future that you have to deal with drug addiction and mental health? How do you plan? I mean, how are you going to deal with that? We got the largest mental institution here in Harris County. How does one even begin to deal with that?
That's a good question, and every case is going to be different, and the thing being is there are rules for the release of people with mental issues on personal recognizance bonds. Those rules aren't being followed very often.
Recently we have Sandra Bland laws coming into effect.
That's right.
Yeah.
Obviously the goal is with folks with mental issues to get them the help they need, to move them out of the criminal justice system. We have a revolving door of several hundred people that you see them all the time. If you do indigent defense down in misdemeanor, they're there, time and time again. But we've closed the doors on mental health institutions, and we've just thrown people out on the street.
How do you think that a judge should receive and use the tools that pretrial services and the probation department are providing? So, for example, currently, if the TRAS says do this, judges do it. If the cast or if the interview says this, judges do it. Do you believe that that's working, or is it not? I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
You're talking about for probation.
I'm saying either probation. Yes, for example, let's say we do on the probations. I mean, if I already know my guy's going to go in there, he's going to answer the 5 or 6 categories, and it's going to come back with the WHO, or it's going to come back with SafeP. I already know this is going to happen, and there's no way around it. You can't get around that. No matter what argument I present, no matter what supporting evidence will show that if he goes to SafeP and waits for 6 weeks for a bed and then spends 6 months in the system versus we have this perfectly fine outpatient rehabilitative treatment that the family is willing to pay right now, and in fact he's already in it. The judges seem to just always to default back to the recommendation by after the assessment. What's your take on using those assessments, and is there any room for improvement on that?
Well, there's always room for improvement on any type of assessment tool. I think the assessment tools that we're using now are good, and they give a good guideline. But the thing is you can't just take every case as a cookie cutter. The same thing with the new bond schedule. You're still going to have to insert judgment into every case. And if you have a case where someone has already enrolled, then that is something that should be taken into consideration. I know one of the things that they do up in Rick Court, they have counselors there, right there to meet with people in court. So that the TRAS could say one thing, and you have another counselor who's actually spent time on multiple occasions with somebody, and they could say, hey, this is not necessarily right for this. Attorneys do that as well. Attorneys spend time with their clients, and they can say, hey, look, I know what this TRAS says. However, these are other factors that aren't part of that assessment. This is part of their life. This is who they are, and that's one of the things that criminal defense attorneys have to do. And those arguments have to be taken into consideration, as well as the state being able to say why that's a bad idea.
Right.
I don't think any case should be treated cookie cutter. I don't think that we should ever rope ourselves in either fear of some bad outcome because we didn't follow the recommendation or anything like that. Every case has to be treated individually, and any type of treatment we do as part of a probation should be individually treated and tailored, and that judges should take a role in that as far as finding out what is best.
Yeah.
But that's how it's always been done.
I know.
You see that?
I see what you're saying there.
You see that?
That's why it's time for a change.
You think?
Speaking of time for a change, I've had enough of the issues.
What do we got?
Huh?
What do we have?
Well, look, Chris, the bottom line is you're running for an office, okay? So it's kind of like, I view it kind of like you're going to be dating the people of Harris County for the next 4 years if you get elected, right?
I was horrible at dating. Let's not do dating.
I mean, let's be honest.
Luckily,
I found who's really good at it, right? Nobody's great at it, okay? But no, my point is, we need to use the last part of this program to find out about you, okay? Because I think that's an important thing for not just candidates, but especially somebody who is going to be on the bench judging other people. I mean, I kind of want to know about you because first off, you got a nice accent to you. So it's clearly not a city accent. So where the heck are you from?
I'm originally from North Carolina. I
Okay.
grew up in a small town called Randleman, North Carolina. If you've
Randleman. I've never heard of that.
Well, have you ever heard of Richard Petty?
Of course, the king.
The King. I'm from his town.
All right.
I graduated high school with his youngest daughter.
Really?
Rebecca, yes.
Were you good at dating her?
I was not. She had impeccable taste. in
Your life
men.
might have changed
So
had you married the king's daughter.
She would not date me. She had better taste in men. My poor wife. But yeah, I'm originally from there, blue collar upbringing. I'm the first member of my family to graduate college, much less law school. My family is very proud of that, though, you know, I've been very lucky. I did work hard, but I was lucky enough to have generations of people who made sacrifices for me so that I could achieve more.
Is your family still in North Carolina?
My parents were there. Actually, they were visiting, you know, their grandkids here in Houston.
Yeah.
And they just left earlier this week, so they arrived back in North Carolina today.
One grandkid, or?
I have two. I
Okay.
have two sons. I have a 4-year-old Thomas and a 2-year-old Henry.
It's a handful.
Yes, the little one scares me a little bit.
They all scare you. They all scare you. So how'd you get to Texas?
I came here for law school. Law is actually a second career for me. I was in technology manufacturing.
What does that mean?
I worked for a company that would, you know, they would outsource manufacturing. They would be the manufacturer for people like Lucent, Nortel, all these, I guess, all of the HP. What were they called? Compact before that?
Yeah.
I had a compact.
Yeah, exactly. I worked for a company that manufactured those things for them. TiVo, we manufactured TiVos out of Mexico.
The original DVR.
Yeah.
The original.
TiVo that?
I was an original adopter of that. But yeah, we manufactured that. But in early 2000s, you know, the .com bust and all of that equipment that would run the internet sites and these servers that they had, well, you know, demand really dropped off. My company was sold, and a good 1,000 of my closest friends and I were laid off one day, and it was difficult to get a job in that industry for a while. So I followed you know, another path, and I moved to Houston. I knew I had to get residency so that I could get cheaper tuition to U of H. So for the first year here, I worked in a paint warehouse, unair conditioned. I think I was the only guy that spoke English in there. But I learned to really appreciate the Houston summers.
Yeah.
It gets hot here.
Yes, it does.
But I've been here since 2004. I went to law school. I started as an evening student, chiefly because I was afraid that it had been so long since I'd been in college that maybe I'd lost a step. But I was still able to finish up in 3 years. My last 2 years I went to work at the DA's office, knowing that I wanted to do criminal law. It's something I've always found fascinating, and I've loved practicing it every day since I graduated law school, and even before then.
How did you become interested in criminal law?
Like most people, watching Law and Order, right?
Isn't that how everybody does it?
I think so.
I saw this on Law and Order, and I became really into it.
Well, no, I mean, there's a reason that those
Sure.
TV shows are so addictive to people. Criminal law is fascinating. Now, you're dealing with people's lives, and that was probably the scariest thing when I was hired on as a line prosecutor at the district attorney's office. Here I am, you know, a poor boy from North Carolina, and I have people's lives in my hand every day. That's terrifying, as it should be. And, you know, hopefully I'll be a judge soon, and that's, you have even more power. And that should be even more terrifying. I think I have the right temperament for that, because I do see how awesome a power it is to be a prosecutor or to be a judge. And I don't think I'll ever lose sight of that.
Yeah.
What do you think's the biggest challenge one who is a judge faces?
I'm sorry.
What do you think is the biggest challenge that an individual who's a judge would face?
sentencing is going to be a challenge in every case because you want to get it right. I mean, this is somebody's life. And in some cases, you're going to have a really bad guy. I mean, I'm sure you guys, I mean,
I've represented plenty of bad dudes.
we've all represented some bad guys, and I've prosecuted some bad guys. It feels good to prosecute a bad guy, and it's a little difficult sometimes to defend someone who is a bad guy. It's important to be able to do so.
Right.
But that's it. As a judge, it's going to be scary because you want to get it right.
Obviously, I mean, losing your job and having to restart over, pretty big event in your life. But is there anything else that you think, an event in your life that has defined who you are as a person?
I think we're all defined a little differently every day. Everyday experiences define us. I was in the military. I did that. That was a defining time in my life.
You left that out.
You omitted some stuff from your background. Now, come on.
You're in the military?
I mean, do I need to go down and figure out what your sign is and all that?
Well,
if I do, I'm going to ask the detailed questions in the questionnaire here. You're not going to tell us.
I look back at my military service. I never really had to go to war or anything, so I don't see that as at the level of some of the folks who are coming back now. Those guys are heroes. I was willing to do that kind of thing, but I was never called to do it. So it's not something I think is a forefront as who I am. The most defining moment, and I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way, is that day one of holding your first kid. There's who I was before I was a dad and who I am after. That's a defining moment.
There is a definite line of demarcation.
Without a doubt.
When you become a parent, it's like BC and AD, man. I mean,
exactly.
It is a whole new chapter in the world has started at that point.
But I've been very fortunate in my life to do a lot of different things, to wear a lot of different hats. And I'm very proud of my blue collar upbringing. That down to earth type of mentality that I have, and I think all of those things have built upon one another to make me somebody I think that has good judgment, that people would look to judge them fairly.
We always say life experience. That's the most important thing. I mean, it really is. And I mean, I feel like, we only got 30 seconds left, Chris, but I mean, I'm going to say it. I think life experience is important, and seems like you got a lot of it. So. Well,
I'm a little older than I look, maybe.
No, I mean, just in terms of what you've been through and the things that have helped shape your life. So, we appreciate you coming on the program and talking with us for an hour.
Glad to be here.
Went by quick. Went by real quick. Oh, you know what? Next week is our big show.
It's lined up.
It's lined up. We're going to have a big show next week, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be doing a tribute show. Tune in next week for a really great show. We've got 3 very, very big names in the legal field. Check out our Facebook page because we're going to be promoting. I'm not going to give it away this week, but please check out our Facebook page and our Twitter. We're going to be promoting everything, but you will want to tune in next week because we have a big show with 3 legal giants that you won't want to miss. So be sure to check us out next week. For Julio Vela, Chris Morton, I'm Jimmy Ardwan. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.